JB Knowledge Podcast Network. On episode 70 of the Insurtech Geek Podcast, talking about the platform economy with Hedi Mardisoo from Cachet. The Insurtech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, is all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. We'll be interviewing guests and doing deep dives into specific tech we see changing the industry. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. I don't know, man. It's Friday, November the 12th, 2021, not 2020, Rob Galbraith. We're at the end of 21. It's about to be 2022. Again, continuing the year and a half long time warp that has been this 18 months. We are progressing through fall. College football is coming to It's so terrible. I'm going to have to resort to watching other sports, which is always a tough move for me, Rob, but it's neither here nor there. How are you doing over there in San Antonio, Rob Galbraith?
Yeah, doing well, James. You know, what's nice here about Texas is it's a little bit cooler, a little bit more comfortable being outside. So it's almost like our summer up north in some ways. So it's a beautiful time. We don't get the we don't get the fall colors, but all of a sudden for the temps. Yeah.
People are like, "Oh, it's so nice. It's in the 70s and sunny." I'm like, "This is all summer in Michigan." Like, this is what it feels like. It's so nice up there. Oh my goodness. And joining us from the country of Estonia, Hedi. How are you doing, Hedi?
Well, very good. Nice to meet you both. And yeah, it's cold and dark outside.
Yeah, no, it is your neck of the woods, isn't it? It gets cold and dark for what, 5-6 months?
Oh yeah, we're just getting started to the coldest and darkest month.
Oh. Well, at least it makes you appreciate sunny summers, right?
Absolutely.
Maybe some beach trips down to Israel or Greece or Italy are in store for you in the near future.
Well, actually, I just came from Brussels. Oh, sorry, I just came from Portugal. There was a web summit, so it wasn't too bad. So.
Yeah. I've not been to Portugal. It's on my list. I would like to go there. I hear it's very nice. I've been drinking their wine for decades now, so.
Well, recommending highly.
Yeah, should be a really good visit. Well, we're glad to have you on the show. I know it's very late for you there, but we appreciate you joining us. Before we get started talking, don't forget you can subscribe to the Insurtech Geek Podcast by texting Geek Out to 66866. Make sure you never miss an episode. Text Geek Out to 66866. Back to Hedi Mardisoo from Cachet. That's Cachet, and the website, for those of you who like to look at the website while we're talking, is cachet.me. That's cachet.me. You can go there. Of course, they have an English version of their website for all of our English speakers on the Insurtech Geek Podcast. We're going to talk about Cachet in a second. You're co-founder and CEO at Cachet. But before we do that, we're going to talk about you. You got a bachelor's in information and communication management from Northumbria about 20 years ago, right around the same time I got my degree as well. So you and I graduated within a year of each other. Then you got a master's in information science from Tallinn University. What did you originally want to do career-wise? Why'd you go into information and communication management, information science? Like, what was the original goal, and what did it end up being?
Very good question. So actually, there's a very good story connected with it. So Estonia is known for its kind of digitization. We are one of the most digitized nation in the world. And I had a luxury of growing up inside literally everything. So my mom used to arrange all the large events like seminars, conferences, exhibitions, and obviously I had to help out there a lot. So when I was 13 to like 15, I went to the conference every year. And I remember I was just listening to different presentations, and I saw that, there were the Moore's law and everything's just going exponential with data. And I was thinking, okay, that's probably a safe bet to go and study something connected, how to sort it out, how to really understand, organize, etc. So that's basically was the decision why I went to study information science and communications.
Yeah, and what about technology has really geeked you out for the last 20 years? Like, what do you did you really enjoy hardware, software, web development, mobile? Like, what really piqued your interest?
Depends when. But I worked 9 years in a bank, and before that in a business software. So I've been always very much on the edge of what's happening. I would say 20 years ago, probably mobile technology. I traveled around with very much with Nokia and everything what they were doing, and worked very closely with them. And when I went to bank and worked there, then really the kind of big data and the kind of what's happening really in the kind of overall cloud space. And obviously I worked very closely with cyber and everything, and helped to communicate issues there. In 2007, there was the first ever cyber war in Estonia. I was literally in the very central heart of it with since the bank got also taxed. So I was very interesting in what's happening in cyberspace and the security and all that part.
That's awesome, and I'm fascinated about the Estonian connection. If for those of you who don't know much about Estonia, I'm not the resident expert. All I can say is that it's right next to Finland and Russia, so it's pretty far north latitude-wise, and it is a very, very well-developed country. It's been inhabited for at least 11,000 years. First, people, I just did a little brush up. I love history, and Estonia first signs of civilization were 9,000 BC. So there's been people there for a long time. Fascinating country in general. Most folks that I've talked to from your area of the world speak a bunch of different languages. What languages did you grow up speaking? What do you speak now?
I speak Estonian, English, Finnish, a little bit Swedish, and Russian. So Finnish, Finnish is pretty much the same as Estonian language. So I literally learned it on watching cartoons when I was a kid. So yeah, but the other languages just came from work. I used to work long years in different Swedish companies. So yeah, that was a handful. That was a good language to know. And obviously Russia is next to us, so we learn it at school as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it is a very wired and connected country. It's interesting how what you grow up in really ends up influencing your life so much. I went to an engineering high school. It was a public high school, but it was very technologically oriented, and dozens of tech companies have spawned off from my high school because of how you take a bunch of 14 to 17-year-old kids and you give them ultra high speed internet. In the 90s, we had really fast connections, and your imagination runs wild. You end up developing a lot of skills, and I think that's also the case of where the kind of the area that you grew up in, and how that's influenced things. Let's go to Cachet and just talk about it. What is Cachet? What does it do? What does it specialize in? Just walk us through the business.
So we started Cachet now a few years ago with a goal to really help platform economy with different financial services, because and we even like to say we enable the platform economy lifestyle via financial services. And what does that really mean? That platform economy is growing extremely fast. There is, in US you have 50 something almost percent of people doing independent work or platform work. There's tons of different terms how you can define it, but I like to use platform economy because that kind of brings both the kind of gig workers and also the kind of sharing economy participants into the same phrase. So we started to create and solve a problem in insurance for ride hailers. So basically Uber, Lyft drivers. In Europe, there is obviously a list more. And the problem for them was that majority of the kind of insurance, they could either buy regular, or then actually when they started to provide service taxi, and this ended up being 5 to 10 times more expensive for them. So obviously then you can't talk about platform economy, because if you want to work a couple of hours a week, just as a kind of side job or something, then paying for the taxi insurance, you literally need to work minimum 10 hours and then start to earn something additional. So we came up with a solution literally to kind of bring the data from various different platforms around the individual and the vehicle, and make it flexible by that. So we are the ones that know in our markets how many hours actually one person with one car is providing service. It doesn't matter if it's doing it on Uber or in Estonian case, Bolt, Yandex Taxi, or others. And we managed to really make them very happy because we brought the prices down on average 50% in the market. That really gave us a very good lift. And now we literally have been insuring almost 90% of everybody that does ride-hailing in Estonia, for example, with their own vehicle.
So Estonia is a really wonderful test bed. It's the whole country smaller than most U.S. cities, right? And so you've got 1.3 million people in the whole country, which allows you to experiment at a scale that allows you to really control the variables. Why have you been successful reducing price that much? Right? It's a huge decrease in premium. How have you been able to decrease premium and still keep your loss ratios in line and be and make money? Like what have you done differently that no one else could figure out?
So I think that the kind of one major thing that we did right from the day one was that we understood that there is no whatsoever loyalty in the platform economy. So there's no such a thing as an Uber driver, or there's no such thing as a Lyft driver. There's a driver that normally provides services on Uber and in Estonia Bolt and others at the same time. They are businessmen. They maximize their income of the time they wanna work. So we put that hypothesis to the right place right away, which meant that we had the full picture of how they really work, and by that, a different insights into their risks. And that kind of trustworthy data converted really nicely on kind of on the promise of there's gonna be, or the hypothesis that there's gonna be lower risk coming year after, and this we managed to prove. So and obviously since we are not the carrier ourselves, so we have underwriters that we work with, and the kind of co-designed solution, taking some of the historic knowledge that they had with the knowledge that we brought on and the data that we brought on, we managed to do a really successful product. So now we are scaling to new markets, and let's keep fingers crossed that we can do all the same effect there with a slightly larger target group than Estonia.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob?
Hedi, we've had a chance to talk a little bit prior to this podcast, and it's been great to see your growth and development at Cachet. I'd love you to just drill in a little bit more on this idea of you're really creating a full picture of that freelancer, right? And so exactly as you referenced, these folks are on multiple platforms. So you can't just look at, only their activity driving for Uber, only their activity driving for Lyft, right? But you want to look across all the platforms. And you've managed to create the connections, right, to acquire all this data, to process all this data, and to make sense of it, and to create that holistic view of that freelancer. So maybe just talk a little bit about how did you go about it? How challenging has it been to kind of create that full picture? Do you use things like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and others to create some of these models that you mentioned as you work with your underwriting partners? Just give us a little bit of the behind the scenes look of how you make this possible.
So I think the kind of step one is to really understanding the problem deeply, and we are super lucky to have also the platforms really coming along because they understood as well. They knew that their drivers are providing service in many places, and they understood right away that we get that problem. And I will actually explain a bit and bring some bit of a deeper maybe insight. So why we probably we have a stronger edge also in really understanding deeply the kind of platform economy because of also the co-founder Cachet has. But basically the platforms really were keen and happy to partner up with us. So that went very well. So they started to share data with us. That was a very, very big, I would say, success. And from there on, obviously, yes, the models that we build is literally, the other bigger part of it is really GDPR. The trust that we have and we are building with the drivers. So we don't collect anything secretly or that they can't see, but the whole concept has been built on the knowledge and the kind of trust between us that they see everything that we collect about them. And there is a very, very kind of important reason behind it, because if you as a person see and understand your kind of different behavior patterns, work patterns, etc., you start to make your own conclusions of it, and start to understand some of the kind of patterns they come with what will come with it. And I think that was a very important thing that we incorporated into the kind of product thinking. So the person constantly sees everything that they do, and they understand what we share also then and what we use in the models that we have done. And I would say this is probably as important part of the whole whole product as any other, because the goal eventually is that when they start to see some negatives, price increase, they also understand that they probably need to tweak some of their activities. Like, it's not safe to overdrive or drive 20 hours in a row, which obviously we tell them, and some of them do that. But it's impossible for, let's say, Uber to know who drives 20 hours because they only know their part. So yeah, that's kind of this kind of triangle that we've built, where we really have, in a one way, empowered the person or the driver in that case, and the other way also kind of make them more accountable and make it visible for them to understand how they work, how they provide service, and what's the kind of loop in the price from there.
Sounds like there's an opportunity with all the data you collect and the fact that you share and show them the data, that you have a transparent relationship with them about the data. You can actually help them with more than just their insurance. I mean, if there's no brand loyalty at all to the platforms that they're on, and it's all about the independent contractor, and you're going to be their primary vendor, right? Other than whoever they buy gas from or whoever repairs their car, their insurance carrier is going to be their main vendor. Sounds like you could actually step into a value added kind of a preferred advisor role, helping coach them better on how to run their business and mitigate risk. I mean, is that part of the long play? Is it really developing a partnership with all these independent contractors?
Yeah, and we see ourselves as a kind of ecosystem of services that we're pulling together, because and the kind of key connector around that is exactly the kind of the data model, or really the work behavior model that we pull together, and it actually goes beyond. I'm an ex-banker from my kind of past, and I still often ask from my colleagues, are you giving loans now to Uber drivers? And the answer is still no from the kind of more bigger banks, and the reason is very simple. Banks just don't trust that the Uber drivers will actually earn the similar income the next month. But we have 2 years data to prove that. I think the kind of last time during spring we took it out, we saw that around 80% of the drivers that we have on our kind of portfolio, approximately 60% of the time, drive with exactly the same pattern or same logic. So if you give that data to a bank, they say, "Oh, that's actually something that they can already trust, that this person will actually do the same in the next coming month." Because obviously there is a massive churn, and I think this kind of thing has been missing today from the platform economy, and Cachet has strongly filled that hole, and now scaling the solution throughout Europe, and hopefully soon also we might come across the ocean.
Yeah, Rob?
So, Hedi, one of the things that really strikes me in this conversation is that you have a very customer centric approach. And I think about traditional insurance as being very product centric. So, you have auto insurance, home or renter's insurance, you might have, small business insurance, you might have cyber coverage, et cetera. Maybe you have an agent or broker that's helping you out, that's packaging all that together, but typically you're dealing with a lot of different entities. And quite frankly, that's just kind of our system, right? You have to file certain contract forms with state regulators, get approved. And I just think of insurance as general. At the end of the day, they can ask you a lot about your business and try to understand it. But there's going to be a set of underwriting questions, and it's basically kind of which products that already exist can I put you into? And so you really go beyond that, right? You're giving them the coverage, but then you're also giving them feedback. You're showing them their behavior, and you're giving them an opportunity with loss prevention, tips and information. Like, they can really shape their behavior. They can influence their rate that way. So, I know a lot of traditional insurance companies kind of talk about that, maybe have worked around on the fringes, but it just strikes me as a full paradigm shift to go with a customer-centric approach that you're taking at Cachet. So maybe you can kind of, I guess, compare and contrast a little bit. What does it take to have a customer-centric model rather than a product-centric one?
Let me start by actually, and I like to use the word person-centric model. And why is that we are building it for the person, literally. So it's their data, their kind of data room in that sense, that we ask and kind of work together in order to get the better services and better financial services. So in that sense, the kind of customer-centric is even maybe something I would sometimes challenge, because customer-centric is often still defined by the big corporations, saying that this is the way they want to sell to the customer. But obviously it could be something to discuss longer. But why we have selected strongly the kind of model is we are strong believers that the world is moving more and more kind of decentralized, and the person and its kind of digital footprint, everybody's coming much more aware of what they leave behind and what are the kind of pluses and minuses, security-wise, etc. And I think that it's slowly shaping into becoming much more organized. And we are developing our solution already to that world, literally, where kind of this kind of normal thing is data portability, and people can say, okay, use my Discord, or I want to use that to get better services. So that's kind of more on the vision towards what we're building. But why I'm myself very passionate about the data that I leave behind. So I'm monitoring myself since the first Kickstarter campaign of Aura Ring, and I've learned so much about myself. So I always kind of feel that this is either you see yourself and the world in 2-dimensional kind of view or 3-dimensional, and this kind of IoT data and the overall data patterns really give you the kind of the dimension you often don't notice. And that's why the team is very passionate about really looking different things that you can improve and actually visualize and illustrate to the customer. And by that, you can change behaviors or improve them. I always bring myself as an example when I'm talking about car accidents. I think most of my car accidents have happened in November, dark nights, exactly like we have right now. It's rainy, and then the lights or something, and then I crash. So today I'm actually not going to take a car. I have learned from it, but someone should have told me already years ago, okay, just maybe use Uber during those evenings. But jokes aside, so we all have those kind of things you otherwise wouldn't notice and see. And if we can help to correct those habits or kind of just make it visible for the person that they will do that themselves, then everybody would win. And I think this part has been always missing from insurance. And we, from our little corner, have started to do the first steps what we can towards there. And platform economy is definitely someone who would benefit the most of this approach.
Sounds like GDPR is actually a competitive advantage for you, and being able to start this company in Europe, having that kind of transparency where we don't necessarily have that in the US and certainly not in a lot of Asian markets. And to your point, many insurance companies use a ton of data, but it's not always transparent. In fact, rarely is it transparent to the end insured how that data is being used, where it comes from, and how it impacts their rates.
GDPR definitely inspired us to kind of do that, because I'm never advocating that someone should just delete my data or something. But what I've been always pissed off that I know that the banks, everybody's collecting tons of data about me, and they know about some things that I don't know about myself. The only thing that I as a person want, and I'm like, show it that to me as well, so I can learn about myself. Really, just teach me, make me smarter of the data that you collect and analyze. But obviously, this is slowly moving to that direction, and yeah, so I think we would all be much smarter to understand what Facebook is thinking about us, or maybe not.
It's interesting, certainly Europe and the United States, and I'd say North America and Europe are moving closer and closer to individual liberties with your data, right? Like actual owning your data, having the rights to your data, knowing what data people are collecting on you. And there's a huge part of Asia that's actually moving the exact opposite direction right now. There was big news out of China this week that they enshrined their leader Xi Jinping as a kind of an institutionalized leader in the history of China, which further solidifies and cements his role there. And they have been leading the way in collecting data on people that they never tell them about. I mean, and demanding that every tech company that operates in their country, including any insurers, and I really believe ultimately this will, continue to lock out a lot of Western insurers from their market, because they require that you hand over so much data on people. But it is interesting that this inspired y'all, and really is neat in a regard that it establishes a positive relationship between the MGA, in your case, slash carrier. Of course, their relationship is with you and the insured, right? It's less of an afterthought and more of a meaningful, direct relationship. So there's something to be said there for just the nature of how you relate to the person actually buying the insurance. I would like to go back to a side comment you made that it's a tangent. Okay, so just bear with me. It's a tangent, but you said that you wear the Aura ring and that it has helped you identify things about yourself. You've got it on right now. I have some friends that have purchased and been wearing Aura rings for years. They were early in on the early adoption program, and this type of device is a key part of parametric insurance at some level, where you're you're tracking and sharing and storing and then insuring off of data. Can you help me understand what you've actually gleaned out of Aura? Like what is it actually telling you that's of value? And how do you think that impacts the future of what you're going to have available to you as an insurer?
Yeah, I think Aura Ring has, in that sense, inspired me of very much of the one main matter is exactly the patterns and the kind of small doses of info that I get every day, which is the same format, same way, and I just I get it, I look at it, and something starts to happen behind in my brain. Just to kind of connecting the dots and making your own conclusions. I think the most visible example I brought, I actually discovered that I'm lactose intolerant because of the Aura Ring. And why is that? Something started to bother me, and then I just started to kind of try to find answers. And basically, with some patterns, what happened, some sort of body temperature increasing, things like that. I literally understood that, okay, I need to go and check it out. And then, eventually it became clear that, I'm lactose intolerant. So things like that, you can start, and I wouldn't have discovered it from just probably something else, but it was purely because I started to see some movements, some weird kind of changes in my kind of daily data.
It's interesting because I'm a hardcore Apple Watch guy, and this has been amazing. When I turned 40, I started going to a cardiologist to make sure everything was all right, get checked up, and I rolled in with a boatload of data, and he literally didn't even know what to do with it. Like I'm like, well, here's my last 30 EKGs. Here's my heart rate. Here's all my AFib tests I took. I'm like, and then here's all the Apple Health connected devices. And so I opened up Apple Health and I showed him like my record with all my EKGs and all my tests and all my heart. And he's like, oh, wow. Well, this. So then he just sits there and he like geeks out on the data for the next 10 minutes. You have an incredible amount of data on this. You have heart rate and EKG data for the last 6 months. And you have blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, this is like modern life. I've got a ton of data on me that I own. And of course, I love Apple's perspective on this, right? Is that the individual owns the data. Apple has really led the charge on privacy. And one of my favorite quotes on data privacy is from Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, who said, if an online service is free, you're not the customer, you're the product.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he was speaking very directly about Google, but they've really drawn a line in the sand about data privacy, data ownership, knowing what data is stored on you, and then using it effectively, right? To actually give you recommendations. I mean, I think it's a good hallmark for us for insurance, and what we can do there. So we know where you are now. Rob has a wonderful question about the next step with Cachet.
Yeah, Hedi, we've talked a little bit about ride sharing, of course. I think that was maybe the original platform economy, or certainly one that most folks kind of think about when we use that term. But there's obviously a ton of different platforms for all manner of provision of businesses, services, Fiverr, Etsy, you name it, I could go on and on. And so it feels like what you're building at Cachet really kind of lends itself to maybe a lot of different product lines. So kind of what products do you offer today, and where is your kind of product roadmap headed in the future?
So today then we have the motor insurance for ride hailers, as we discussed. We just quite recently now also launched a product called City Rider Insurance, and this is again person-centric. So we designed the solution. Basically, it's a third-party liability together with accidents and some elements of health combined for a city rider, someone that has multiple different. Is it kick scooter, or is it bicycle, or are you traveling mono-wheelers, or there's a whole bunch of different things you can use while being insured. And obviously, this the kind of key target there is also all the key workers that provide courier service. So that's something we piloted just very recently, and we are now looking for ways to do some part of the same, this kind of cross platform, to really make it dynamic as well. And yeah, this is still what we believe, that in the world of insurance, even though we are probably in somewhat swimming against the tide of everybody wanting to do things via their own platform, that we still believe that if we can bring things together around an individual and create really this slight accountability loop, that's where the kind of real effect will come into the loss ratios and the overall kind of pricings eventually. So.
Hedi, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about distribution as well. So, how do customers learn about Cachet? Are you sold through agent brokers? Are you direct to consumer? Are you an embedded solution in some of these platforms? How are you finding those persons as part of the person-centric business model?
So in the markets where we're at, we have, I would say, the kind of initial year, almost the very, very big percentage of the customer we get via our partner platforms like Bolt and Uber and others. So they promote us in their kind of onboardings, their driver newsletters, etc. But obviously also we have cracked some sort of life of gig worker forums and places how they operate. So we are quite active in different digital social channels and reaching out to them. And yeah, step by step, this has been the way we have built a market, and somewhat obviously going to B2C is a kind of sharper hill to climb, but once you're there, then the view is pretty nice. So.
Well, largely because of customer acquisition cost. I mean, if you look at the marketing budgets of the top 5 auto insurers, it's a staggering amount of money that they spend acquiring customers, and I think that's really where people get really hung up on is on distribution cost, right? I mean, it's a ton of money to play in that game, in particular here in the United States.
Yep, agreed. There is some benefits of starting off in that sense in the smaller markets where this is not that hard. But yeah, so far it has been coming quite nicely. But obviously we understand when we go into more competitive markets like UK or others, then there is a bit of a different journey and price tag on winning over the customers. So.
Do you have any desire to compete in the US market?
Well, obviously, but first we will conquer Europe, and then we'll
there you go.
come and see what we can do over there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rob?
Yeah, Hedi, just keep us posted on kind of where you're going, both from a product roadmap and a geography roadmap. I would be curious as you kind of expand to new geographies, kind of what the reception is and what the learning is. Because as James kind of mentioned, I completely agree that I do feel like there's this almost bifurcation, right? Where in Europe, certainly have been leaders in terms of data privacy, the right to be forgotten, GDPR. We've made some steps here with the California Privacy Act. It's kind of modeled after GDPR that many insurers have to comply with, even outside the state. So it's almost a de facto national standard. But in Asia, certainly we've heard about not just going to the credit scoring, but all the things that kind of go into this, societal risk score or scoring, I guess, in general, not just for risk, but really for all services and products that you buy, that is really kind of closed. People don't see it, they don't know it, but yet it's streaming in a whole bunch of data. And I think it's very interesting, right? We talked a little bit about digital health, the Apple Watch, the Oura Ring, and I know a lot of firms in Asia are really leading in that space because they don't necessarily have some of the HIPAA protections that we have in the US and elsewhere in terms of health and privacy data. So while clearly there's a priority that is placed on that, I can tell you as somebody that's been filling out a lot of forms at doctors' offices throughout the year, that not having the data or the ability to share it or the interchange between doctors can be kind of a pain. And so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, and the different, I guess, societal and cultural views on this is really fascinating.
It's exhausting, Rob. It's exhausting when you know that technology already has the solution to that, and Apple Health has done it. They've already integrated with Epic. All my Epic records sync into Apple Health, and it's exhausting that the solution's already there, and yet there are so many that just refuse to adopt. But this is not the MedTech podcast, and I will not rail on them too hard. So, good discussion with Hedi. Thank you so much. That's Hedi Mardisoo. From Cachet. We do have a couple of news stories. I'll start out with one of my own, and that is that there's some more funding announcements. This is owl.co, OWL. Owl.co pulled down a 30 million Series B round, and they're expanding their process for monitoring claims and mitigating fraud to address the $80 billion cost of claim fraud to American consumers. So they're using machine learning to automate and remove bias from the process, and they're trying to seek a future where nobody pays for fraud. That is a bold goal. There is still a lot of insurance fraud out there. There's a lot of people working on the problem. They got their Series A round, $4.5 million from the Canadian government. Don't you know? Sorry, a little maple syrup on that. And now they've got their next round. So their total funding is now sitting, including all the rounds, their total funding is sitting at $40 million. So I'm excited to hear what's been going on there. There's a couple of other fundings that occurred, of course, about a month ago. CoverGo got a bunch of funding to expand the business to U.S., Canada, and Latin America. They're a no-code platform for insurance firms that helps them streamline their products to manage claims. They raised a bunch of money. So there's continual funding announcements out there in the Insurtech space, and it was exciting seeing that particular announcement. Claims is, of course, my main bailiwick and what I've spent most of my day on. So it's always good seeing something happen there. Rob, since we're talking about auto insurance today, you do have an interesting news story on auto insurance.
Yeah, James, I know this is our weekly news roundup segment, but I do feel like sometimes it's our weekly lemonade segment. So we talked at our last podcast episode about Lemonade finally making the leap into auto insurance after obviously starting on renter's insurance, moving to home quickly, and then pet and life insurance. So this has been a question that's been around for 2 to 3 years. When would they get in the auto insurance market? So I told you about that announcement last week. Well, they made a really big splash this week by announcing that they are acquiring pay-by-mile startup and quite successful one, Metromile, as a valuation of $500 million. So Metromile shareholders are going to get Lemonade common shares. So both companies have gone public in the past year at a ratio of 19-1. The deal is expected to close mid-2022. And Daniel Schreiber, who, as you probably all know, is the founder and CEO or co-founder and CEO, said that most of Lemonade's approximately 1.4 million customers are car owners, and that by bundling its new car insurance with other business lines allows the insurer to entice existing customers and new ones alike, and called it a hugely symbiotic opportunity. Now, I saw a lot of naysayers on Twitter and elsewhere about this deal. I will admit that I'm not in the weeds enough to tell you whether this is a good or bad acquisition, but I love the splash. I love the idea. It feels like there's a lot of synergy here, so I'm going to go with a mild thumbs up, but I'm definitely open to other opinions. So James, Hedi, any thoughts?
Like the Roman Caesar,
that's right. Yeah. It's a slight.
Maybe thumbs up or thumbs down. Yeah. Look, Schreiber's statement is kind of like the no duh statement of the century, right? You mean that if we bundle and save, people might buy more? Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, that one's an obvious one. I mean, if you're in, I almost feel like it's a right to play. If you're in home insurance, you kind of need to be in car insurance at some level because of the bundling and discounting that goes on with all the other major players over here. It is interesting who they purchased and certainly how much they paid for them to show you the strategic value that Lemonade believes this will add. There's always going to be a laundry list of naysayers. So it's always hard to peg if they're right or not, because so many of these companies have defied the conventional odds. And a lot of those naysayers are folks who are firmly vested in the current ecosystem of mainline carriers. And it really freaks them out that two Insurtechs are now public and worth a lot of money and are legitimately competing in that market, which means it's gonna further kind of move their cheese. So well, yeah, we'll see, right? I mean, I agree. I'm going to give it like a thumb sideways. Let's see if they can pull this off. Buying companies is hard. Just being an effective acquirer is really hard, and stitching together technology is actually not easy. And so we'll see how good they are at biting an elephant one bite at a time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Bloomberg article that I'm citing here notes that it's Lemonade's first takeover, and I like that they put first takeover in the headline, implying that there will be others down the line.
Yeah, well, when you have that much cash at your disposal and you can only grow so fast organically, you're going to start acquiring companies instead of just ramping up the lines on your own. Makes sense. Well, thank you. Great conversation, great news, Rob. And Hedi, thank you so much for joining us so late in your day over there in Estonia. We appreciate you being on the Insurtech Geek podcast, and thanks for doing what you're doing in Insurtech.
Well, absolutely. I'm very happy that I had a chance. So thank you so much. It was fun.
Yeah, and if people want to find out more information about Cachet, it's cachet.me. Is that correct? Cachet.me?
Yep, that's correct.
Awesome. And of course, you can reach out to Hedi Mardisoo on LinkedIn. She's pretty active on there, so you can go connect with her there and reach out to her and chat with her there. As always, Rob Galbraith, most interesting man in insurance. Got any conferences coming up, Rob? I'm just curious. Do you have any speaking events or big conferences on the horizon?
So I don't have any in person between now and the rest of the year, but actually just did a Insurtech Insights webinar on Wednesday with a friend of the program, Carrie Ann Nadeau, as well as Vaughn from High Gear. And so definitely check out their website to find a replay. In fact, I'll also be doing another webinar next month, as I did it kind of at the end of 2020, looking into 2021. So this one will be with Rob and Kira, also an Insurtech Insights webinar, looking what's in our crystal ball for 2022. So definitely check out their website, register for the one that's coming up in December, and look for the replay that should be posted soon.
Yeah, Rob, as you know, I've been full back at events since like June was my first event that I've been at, and I've been trucking it. We pulled together a list of all the Insurtech events in 2022. It's a lot, and we're going to be at a bunch of them. We have 2 insurance products. We have Smart Compliance, that is Certificate of Insurance Tracking and Collection, and we have our new product, TerraClaim. That's a world-class claims platform that we have built over the last 2.5 years. We are out on the market selling both of them. We are going to be working and very, very busy in 2022 at pretty much every insurance conference you can shake a stick at, showing off our products and talking to insurance folks. And we're very, very excited to be back on the road, back face to face, and hanging out with people. And certainly, if you're out there on the road, you can always hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, wherever you want to connect with me, or you can just text me on the show text line. That's 979-473-9040. 979-473-9040 is our text line if you want to text us any questions, comments, or suggestions, or if you just want to meet up at like Dig In or at RIMS or at Insurtech Connect next year or whatever you want to do, we'd love to connect with you. This has been the Insurtech Geek Podcast, powered by JB Knowledge, jbknowledge.com, all about technology that's transforming and disrupting the insurance world. I've been your host, James Benham. That's jamesbenham.com, with co-host Rob Galbraith. That's endofinsurance.com. Big thanks to Jim Greenlee, our podcast producer, Kara Daltonara, our creative producer, and thank you for joining us today. We're taking you on a journey through insurance tech, so enjoy the ride and geek out. See you next time.